What's up, man? How's it
Beautiful. You know, today was just for some reason I just have felt really good today. I don't know why. I've just been feeling really energized and positive. And I watched a video on Austrian housing policy. So I've been feeling like, I don't know why, just a little bit more uplifted and feeling like rejuvenated in fighting for the causes I believe in, Because I think of doomerism as liberalism, like the last stage of your liberalism, because it gives you permission to kind of give up, and it makes you passive and apathetic. So every day I try to practice like anti-doomerism, and I don't want to permit it to creep in. And so I've been finding new ways to get involved. And I want to thank you for your stream as being another beacon of positivity and solidarity that all of us can learn from.
Yeah, thanks for saying that. It's been, I feel the same way. And I have found myself dipping into doomeristic trains of thought over the last couple years. And I'm super excited about this. I think people are taking note of like what happened, and hopefully we'll reproduce it in some way. And I guess like that was one thing I wanted to talk about with you, is like how not just doomerism, but how with our platforms, as I don't know if you call yourself a content or streamer, probably.
I call myself an online organizer because I don't like the phrase content creator. I use it sometimes because everybody does, but I think of it as insulting to everybody who tries to make either news or journalism, commentary, or art. It kind of just turns it into this gruel. And, it gives into the logic. I'm not trying to be too pretentious here. I just, I don't like the phrase content creator because it's just like, what the fuck is content?
Yeah, it sucks, honestly. Yeah. So online organizer, though, I don't hear that too often from online political people. You have a specific focus in organizing then?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I had some of the national DSA member, like executive board on my stream a few times, and they're like, when they onboard new members, they would be like, they would ask people how they got involved in DSA or PSL or whatever. And the answer would always be, they'd be like, oh, Mike from PA. They thought it was a meme, like Kilroy or something, because they were such a large percentage of their new members kept saying Mike from PA and Hassan. So when they realized that was real, they started messaging me to come on my stream. And that's kind of what I like to do. I think of these spaces as they serve a dual function. We educate each other. Political education is really important. And they're a space for us where we don't have to always engage in 101 conversations. We can have conversations that are a little bit more advanced. And then we try to connect these online spaces and make them relevant in our local areas and in national politics in general. And so that's kind of what I see my goal is, I come from politics. I had an ill-fated campaign in 2014. I've helped leftists get elected at the state and local level over the years. And then I made this project, this stream as a lark in 2019. And then it became so successful that it became my full-time thing. And so I try to pay back that, incredible luck that I've gotten and return it back to society and the community that I'm a part of. And I'm a little bit pugilistic. A lot of people who are not very left-wing really love to hate on me. I fought with, Destiny and Vosh very, very early on. And so I had to like kind of make it through that cesspit before everyone else was really fighting them. I was like the first one. So there's been a lot of effort, I've been fighting them for a very, very long time.
How did, how was that experience, and how is it seeing how things have played out in the last, I guess, 3 years as time has gone on? Because obviously I see the chat saying Mike was right, and that's one thing I would probably include in that experience,
I think, that particular meme has started because of the 2024 election in particular, where I picked 49 out of the 50 states right, and kind of was one of the few people on the left who was just like very, very pessimistic about Kamala Harris because of her support of the genocide.
Michael from Pennsylvania's prediction is Nevada, Arizona, done deal. North Carolina, Georgia, done deal. PA and Michigan?
I know how to analyze polling, and there was a lot of wishful thinking going on. And so I was able to say, like, hey, she's going to lose. Gaza is going to be a major part of that. the internet isn't just the internet. It is real life now. Like something like 95% of people are on the internet pretty regularly now. So when you see online sentiment surrounding young people with Gaza, that is real politics. And what we saw in places like Michigan was some precincts swung 110 points toward the Republicans because people were just so desperate for a change in Gaza. Now, I never fooled myself and thought Donald Trump would be any different. He's just as bad, if not worse, than Biden or Kamala. It was just part of a larger, milieu. And, your other question, which is the less important question, but still important, which is how do you deal with people who are grifters or scumbags or, who attack us? And I want to thank them, honestly, because first of all, just the logic of the internet is engagement is what gets you promoted. So the fact that I was fighting with them and on the right side of history, that's part of the Mike was right shit, right? Like I was right about all these other, individual people I fought with, and just they promoted me. They kept me relevant. They boosted me in the algorithm. You're seeing it with Ethan Klein now. I have a member of my community made a thank you Ethan Klein song. And all these people who are really meritorious in their own right, but might not have found an audience, have been able to use this like drama content slop and turn that into political education and organizing and really boosted the pro-Palestinian movement in so many of these platforms, which is so vitally important because we can't forget that there are millions of people that are suffering and we have got to build a movement that stands against it. So, I mean, I think the haters actually are our biggest fans and they've helped us tremendously, while at the same time destroying their own careers, which is always gratifying to see.
Yeah. It's amazing how many creators have popped up onto like my radar that are making amazing stuff. And just by starting out being like, oh, this guy's a Zionist and no one's talking about it really. And then these videos do well because, people have started to talk about it and then it turns into this thing where, we did this fundraiser. I'm talking to you now. I've never spoken to you, but now I'm hearing you immediately try and bring the conversation. Or I ask about, Destiny and Voss and you're like, that's less important. I'm like, it totally is. But I still... I'm glad to talk to someone that recognizes that, and I'm glad there's more people that are recognizing that because at times, while using the slop, you can, I guess, get lost in the slop maybe, and
yeah,
there are the principled people that have taken the opportunity to continue to keep things focused on politics and keep things focused on things that matter, and I think I guess like how can we do that more, and what can we do with it?
Well, I think one of the things that happens is, there are these stan culture, there's this like mentality of team sports and things like that in these communities. But like one of my very first fights with Destiny was over whether white people should use the N-word, right? And like, to me, that entire conversation was ridiculous on its face.
That's
because
hilarious.
Because it's like in regular society, if you're a white person and you're regularly using the N-word, even in private, if that gets out, you'll lose your job, you'll lose college scholarships, you will be ostracized. Like you're actually promoting an insane position in society that will harm your own viewers as well as yourself. And he's immune because he's like, some fucking racist, slop tuber guy. So he can make money. But all of his fans who buy into this shit are actually putting themselves at risk. And I think this is also true of the Gaza anti-Palestinian creator slop. If you go on TikTok, if you look at the polls, you're seeing 80-90% of people under the age of 30 who support the Palestinian movement. These slop tubers are isolating themselves. They are incredibly unpopular. Their positions are incredibly unpopular. They are so lost in their own sauce. And that's why you're seeing things like Ethan Klein's subscription count, cratering. I think he's down like hundreds of thousands of subscribers, while Hassan's continues to go up, even on YouTube, which is not Hassan's main platform, right? And you see the same thing with, yourself, Denims, all those great, people that you have highlighted and collaborated with. And I'm so gratified to see that. For me, it's just, we're winning. And they've created these kind of like bubbles for themselves, these delusional bubbles. And they have these hate communities, which are full of like very highly engaged and organized people, but a very small population of actual, when compared to the great masses of the youth. And so use the slop to continue to boost ourselves and then I just recently saw a video which is like Ethan Klein is wrong on something, and then it was all about, I think it was like a GDF video, and it was like all about why Israel is committing genocide and why Israel, the settler colonial state is, inherently premised on dispossession, and you get people in the door through that slop tube hook, and they leave the video as much more educated people who are passionate about fighting for what's right. And so I just want to thank them. Keep it up. Fight with us more. I know all of us have tremendously succeeded, and I am passionate about these causes, so I'll talk about them until we no longer need to.
Yeah, I like what you said about the internet being, a reflection of wider politics in ways that I guess it's kind of underplayed, especially by, I think, creators, where they're like, a lot of times they're like, I'm just doing this stuff and I don't really know how it matters, and 3% of the population uses Twitter or whatever sort of, it's probably more than that, but and then relating,
I think it's like 25 or something, but
yeah, it's larger than 3, but still relatively small. But then it is ultimately a reflection of, it can be a reflection of broader attitudes, and kind of what you're talking about in regards to like these communities of people where they're on the wrong side of history, and the numbers are going down, and that is making the people who remain even more extreme and even more self-incriminating in a way that...
And delusional, and even more delusional.
Yeah, exactly. Delusional, and it makes their rhetoric less convincing, and I feel like there's a corollary drawn there with Israel, and actually advocates for Israel and regular people, where you're like, you can't keep defending this thing, this settler colonial state that's built on these lies. The more you look into it, the more people talk about it, the less people will support it, because the more clear the picture becomes about the sort of moral landscape of what that means. And that's a super positive thing, shifting attitudes towards Israel and growing extremism towards these or from these communities that continue that process, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, but, we are in an existential moment. I feel like when we're talking about these culture, this internet culture shit and fighting with these various idiots and the scumbags, we shouldn't forget that we are in a moment of tremendous instability and tremendous risk for the Palestinian people. We had the event of this week, or yesterday, which was the Israeli embassy workers who were shot down in Washington, D.C. I know that you and I both condemn violence and any breaking of the law, because that is the parts of the terms of service of these platforms. So we would condemn that, because our platforms depend upon us condemning it, and we don't believe in violent action, random adventurous violent action being a solution.
And not even necessarily condemn, but don't promote and do not advocate for, maybe. Or
exactly. But that kind of stuff is expected, right? Because people have protested, people have organized, people have advanced international law. They've gone to the ICC, they've gone to the ICJ. And as the ICJ rules in favor of the Palestinians, as the ICC indicts Benjamin Netanyahu for war crimes, what is our liberal response? The liberal response has been to invite him in to speak, to give more aid to Israel, and to attack and sanction the ICJ prosecutor and go after the international law, go after the United Nations. So, people are seeing a live stream genocide, and they're also seeing these institutions of liberalism, which these people that we mostly fight with claim to be liberal. Those institutions are being destroyed, and they don't even attempt to talk about it, or, because their position being in support of Israel is completely incoherent. It's actually doesn't line up even with liberal values, let alone socialist values or leftist values. It's like liberalism is supposed to believe in human universals, and the Enlightenment and universal rights and freedom of conscience and freedom of religion and, bodily autonomy and all these concepts that we hold so high, from the liberal canon. They're all in the wood chipper. They're all in the shredder in service of this settler colonial project and American imperialism. And it's radicalizing millions and millions of people to considering maybe we need even bigger change. And that's the silver lining. But the black cloud is the fate of the Palestinian people. So every single one of us has to do everything we can right now to try to save them. And I don't know about you, but my heart is fucking like torn up every day. There's a pit in my stomach because of this stuff. And realizing that like a lot of the techniques of protest and things that we've tried in the past that have had success are being ignored. And our politicians like Chuck Schumer just had a disgusting rant the other day on the New York Times calling the United Nations anti-Semitic. Like, what space are you leaving people of conscience? And that is the crisis.
Wow, straight out of Netanyahu's mouth, but also straight out of any Zionist's mouth at this point.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I was told that you were actually in D.C. at a protest that I went to recently as well in... When was that?
No, I wasn't in DC. I wasn't in DC. I didn't make it to DC, unfortunately. Yeah.
Around that time, or?
But yeah. I've tried to keep myself. I always try to keep myself in touch with protest movements and the left edge of electoral politics. Because, okay, I may have things figured out in my own mind. I may be the most perfect socialist ever. But if I'm not where the people are, if I'm not where the masses are, if I'm not at least talking about and thinking about the stuff they're thinking about, and that includes electoral politics, that I feel like I'm just making a subculture. I'm just, it's kind of masturbatory. So I always try to do that.
Yeah, with electoral politics, when you do engage with it, how do you deal with the cynicism of the lack of, I guess, change in that space? And do you see any hope for working within it? And how can that be done?
Here, let me read you something real quick. Oh, Luigi. Calm down.
That's awesome.
All right. Sorry about that. That was my iPhone listening for the NSA. Hold on.
You're good.
Let me read something for you. A letter I got. It's from a representative. His name is Ryan Clancy. He's a representative in Wisconsin, and he was being attacked by like the right wing. He's probably one of the most left wing politicians in America. He said, "Hey, Mike, I just wanted to thank you so much for including me again on your show. It came at just the right time, as I was under assault from my anti-Palestinian opponent. You provided a huge boost in spirits. It's hard to adequately convey how bolstered I felt by watching the donation map blow up like a Fallout map. But with enough cash to push back on this hilariously bad attack mailer attached with a mailing to our whole universe. August 13th will be close. If we pull this off, it's because of you and the hundreds of folks you encouraged to donate to me. If we don't, fuck them. Either way, thank you so much. In solidarity, Rep. Ryan Clancy, filthy socialist, Milwaukee, Wisconsin." Now, we won. And that is, to me, what electoral politics is about, is finding those champions that can advance our message and push the frontier and set us up for the thermostatic moment where we have the right person and the right situation, the right environment, and things can line up. And then all sorts of things can change. I know the New Deal is something people kind of throw out there, but in the New Deal, they passed 19 major pieces of legislation in the first 100 days. They hired 6 million people for things like, the Civilian Conservation Corps. They hired artists. They hired folklorists. They hired musicians. They hired, they were building public works all over the country. There was massive change. They got rid of malaria and yellow fever in this country. They built the Tennessee Valley Authority, which brought electric power to 9 southern states and have it be owned by the government. They did so much so fast. That's what we need to set up for, So that's why I engage with electoral politics. I also recognize that right now, like, the Democratic Party is trash. The Democratic Party hates people like me. They hate people like Ryan. They hate these people. And that's why I get so many attacks. And most of the attacks I get are like hilariously bad faith, lies, personal attacks, attempts to make me into some sort of caricature or lolcow. They're the same shit they always try to do to like Hassan or you or whatever. It's because they don't want to engage substantively with what I actually say and do and what you actually say and do. And so it's very important that we, if we're online left-wing content creators, I've always been arguing for solidarity, having each other's backs, as long as, we gatekeep a little bit, and it's anti-imperialism, pro-expansion of the social safety net, and anti-Zionist. As long as you hit those three, you could be to my right, but I'll have solidarity for you, and you have solidarity for me. Let's not punch left. Let's not do anti-communism. Let us come together and push for a better world. And I could literally see it happening. Like that kind of stuff, that letter I read to you is one of those things that keeps me going. And the other thing is, sorry if I was rambling there, spite.
Keep going.
It's our spite. The better we do, the more our enemies mauled. And like they literally are mauling. Like they look at our viewership, they look at our follower count, they look at our subscribers, they look at everything. And every single time somebody donates to your fundraiser, every single time they subscribe to one of these channels, every single time they show up some protest or show up to a stream even when they can't, our enemies are fucking mauling. And that really motivates me. It's fucking great to see them mad.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Sorry if that's petty, but I have a little bit of petty in me.
No, I mean, that doesn't hurt. That helps. Like, it can help. It's a good motivation sometimes. It's a good corollary motivation. What are your, I guess, when you're looking at the landscape of electoral politics, where do you see, in terms of advocacy or maybe specific candidates, where do you see, I guess, places for people that they should be following and working towards boosting campaigns or whatever else, and joining in even, like running for places within electoral politics, talking to, potential viewers that have interests in that realm, or at least just advocating and going out and helping? Like, are there any candidates in specific that you right now are giving you hope, aside from obviously the person you just brought up?
I really do like Zoran in NYC right now. I've been supporting him, funnily enough, since 2019. He caught on my radar because he made a video on housing for the Gravel Institute. I don't know if you ever saw it.
Oh, yeah, I remember that one, yeah.
And I spent a lot of time in Vienna myself because of my family. And so I know about the Gemeingebau and Karl Marxhof and social housing, and how like I think it's over 60, close to 70% of people live at social or public housing in Vienna, and it is the most livable city in the world, and the public transit is outstanding, and you don't see homeless encampments and things like that, and how doable it is, and how easy it is, how shockingly easy it is, because the Austrians are happy to tell you about it. They're happy to help you do it. And the fact that we're wrestling with things like, Ezra Klein's abundance nonsense of like deregulating developers is going to fix our housing crisis, when we have a working model right in front of us that's a YIMBY left model, and it works fucking perfectly, and we can't convince people that is what we should replicate. That is, I don't even know what I was answering. I started rambling about that. Oh yeah, who I like. So anyway, Zoran. The other thing I would say about people with politicians is understand the difference between a sympathizer and an opportunist. A sympathizer is somebody who believes what you believe, but they use dog whistles and they shade it, and they try to, they're triangulating for acceptability, but fundamentally they're with us. And somebody who is an opportunist who's just trying to use the movement for their own gain, and they believe in nothing. Zoran is a sympathizer. Somebody like, who's a good example of an opportunist? Pete Buttigieg, Gretchen Whitmer, Andy Bashir. Like, these are examples of opportunists. They don't believe in what you and I believe. They're just going to use various like social media trends to try to get attention. And so I don't expect sympathizers to say exactly what I would say when I would say it. I let them like have a little bit of space so that they don't get like, completely discredited as being an extremist. I don't expect them to go out there and say like, destroy the Zionist entity. Like, if you're expecting a politician to say that in America in 2025, and there's never going to be a politician you could ever work with. And it really betrays a lot of leftists don't really understand what is needed in this moment. Israel can only exist because of American aid and military support and diplomatic support. We don't have to invade Israel to stop the genocide. We have to just stop giving them the bombs and the fighter jets and the money and the diplomatic cover. All we have to do is pull back, and the genocide will be stopped, because they can't do it without us. So like expecting somebody to be like, I'm going to do a military invasion of Israel to stop the genocide, you're going to be waiting forever. So anyway, I don't know if that makes sense. Go ahead.
Yeah, that makes sense. One question I had was, can we and how can we push someone like AOC left on Palestine? Is that even possible at this point? Or I
think we already have. I think there's two parts of it. I think we have pushed her left. I think part of the problem with somebody like AOC is that if you're looking at AOC and you're like, oh God, she's not left wing enough. I agree with you completely. However, I don't want to hear that same person then go like, man, have you heard of Andy Bashir? That guy's really exciting. Or have you heard of Summer Lee? Or you've heard of Rashida Tlaib? Those people are really, or you heard of Ilhan Omar? Those people are really exciting and cool. And it's like, they are the same thing, right? Right. Well, not Andy Bashir. Andy Bashir is a right winger, but you see what I mean? Like they are all pretty much identical on the substance. They're friends. They're closely allied politically. So I think I would like to see a little bit more sophistication from the people making critiques, because it seems that they don't get that basic fact. And the other thing I would say is like somebody like AOC or Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders, for example, is way worse on Israel than AOC. Like way worse. She's significantly to his left on Israel. She's calling it a genocide. She's saying that we should cut off, aid to Israel. She's saying that, Benjamin Netanyahu should be prosecuted, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Whereas Bernie Sanders still says like Israel has a right to defend itself and shit. So the first thing is, I would say we already succeeded. Number one, we already pushed her left. The second thing is, the main problem with AOC is her popularity comes from her social media, right? Like she's popular because millions of people individually like her and know her, as opposed to what I hope to build, which is a left-wing machine where people come out of organized labor, they come out of like left-wing movements, they come out of maybe more radical or vanguardist formations like PSL or whatever, and they are products of the movement themselves, as opposed to like online famous politicians. So I always see, again, going back to Lenin said that with politicians, they're temporary allies. Like if they're going to work on a project on our terms and support what we're doing, then we support them in kind. But we recognize that bourgeois democracy is not going to deliver the future we want. And we should be building our structures to continually offer critique and criticism and power that comes outside of just relying on that politician. I think there's like an excessive fixation on AOC, but also an excessive like not fixation on any kind of alternative other than kind of, I don't know, bloviating.
How can we push, or I guess capture the types of people you were talking about in a sort of mass movement way, in a sort of, I guess, proletarian way with internet content? Because a lot of times I get the feeling that it's kind of an oxymoron. People that have time to sit down and watch streams, people that have time to watch a bunch of YouTube, typically aren't the type of people that are involved in that sort of thing. Not to call everyone unemployed.
Not necessarily. I think
so?
what you're talking about. Oh no, I totally get what you're talking
Maybe
about.
Hyper fans.
What they would call. We are basically most people that are like on streams and stuff. They're like what they would have called the intelligentsia in the past, right? Which is like they tend to be either upper middle class or middle class themselves, or they come from those kind of families. They have college educations. You know what I mean? Like they're not necessarily rich, but they have the opportunity of not being totally hand to mouth or proletarian or really working class. And this is a problem with DSA. It's a problem with PSL. It's a problem with every kind of like left-wing movement, is how do you connect like what would have been called the intelligentsia to the broader movement, the working class? And I think that's the crisis. If I had an easy answer for that, we wouldn't be in this mess.
Easy answer, yeah, we would have figured it out a long time ago, right?
Yeah, like for me, I am a believer in the trade union movement. I've experienced organizing with trade unionists and seeing people from all sorts of backgrounds, all races, all genders, maybe even political orientations start to align together in solidarity. Like it's almost euphoric when you are in a trade unionist space when they have a strike vote or they win a major concession. And I feel like that is something that we should dedicate ourselves, is building, socialist trade unions, not like business unions, not, Democrat Party unions, but rather like socialist trade unions. And this is kind of a frontier that's being built today. And the American, laws make it very hard to form unions. So that's part of a frontier. And I think you've probably all heard this answer before. I don't think I'm breaking new ground here, but
yeah. Shoot, I had a question. Let me read it down. I was going to ask, like, with you, I don't want to get like too personal, but with you in your sort of politics now, in your experience of your growing, I guess, as a person and learning about politics and your political journey, have there been any points in time that have been very significant in terms of seeing how leftist politics can affect the world, or seeing how the necessity for them, I guess?
Yeah. I mean, when I talk about, even in my own life, I'm a little bit older, So when my younger sister came out to me in 2003, it was before Lawrence v. Texas. So in America, having gay sex or gay relationships was formally illegal in parts of America until 2003. There was a famous Supreme Court case called Lawrence v. Texas, where two men were being prosecuted for having sex. The cops broke into their house, found them having sex, and arrested them, consensual, and prosecuted them for it. And so when my sister came out to me in 2003, and I kind of was shaken out of the complacency of just normal, dude, America in 2003 into a movement that was actively being suppressed. George W. Bush ran in 2004 on banning gay marriage constitutionally, constitutional amendment. And so I've seen the way that queer acceptance has absolutely grown from what was an actively suppressed movement with the power of the state to something that I would say something like 70% of most Americans absolutely think being gay is completely normal, and gay marriage is legal nationwide, and seeing that kind of like success. And it started with radicals. It started with a riot. It started with throwing bricks at cops. It started, black trans women throwing bricks at cops. That's what started the movement that led to liberation. So it didn't start because people played patty cake with politicians. It started because there was a radical street movement that was fighting the cops toe to toe. That's just a historical fact. And so, I feel like, seeing that in my own life, seeing the progression in that space is a great anecdote to doomerism and building something that can prevail culturally, politically, whatever, into a point where acceptance is like taken for granted by most people. And, now we have new frontiers, whether it's like our right for gender liberation, whether we're fighting for Palestinians, whether we're fighting for, equality of all sorts. We should take those lessons and we should learn them well and be comfortable with the part of the movement that is pugilistic, that is fighting back, that is yelling at the libs and forcing them through violent direct action sometimes. There's like a museum at Stonewall now, which is absolutely insane, right? When that happened, the libs were prosecuting those people. Now they're building museums to it. And that's true of the civil rights movement, of all sorts of stuff. I'm just talking about the movement that I lived through, where I was 18 when it started, when I became thrust into it and seeing the success we have today.
How does that connect, or what's the difference between that process of, I guess, radical action, radical internal change, and something like Palestine? I guess I ask because I've had questions about, what are we doing and is it affecting anything? And is protesting, for example, what does it functionally do? Especially when it's been, almost 2 years now, and so many people have protested, and there's just been no real material change in our government's actions. And
let me ask you a question, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
What do you think protesting is for? What does it
question. Mass mobilization of people, I guess, can be a show of solidarity and a show of force in numbers, in terms of how many people are passionate enough about an issue to actually go outside. And I guess on top of that, there's a kind of solidarity and network building of being around a bunch of people that also feel strongly about something, and that strengthening your own views and resolve about it. And then I guess the direct communication people have while they're at protests to, build better things in their local groups or local organizations. Those are the things that pop out in my mind, but there's probably more.
No, those all make sense to me, The thing about protests is it's a modern phenomenon. Like the protests that we think of today with placards and like marching down the street and things like that. Like that's more of a modern phenomenon that grew with mass media. I think of protests as like a media play. It's like to get attention. And as you said, show of force. When hundreds of thousands of people hit the streets and they're all carrying a message, that wakes up, the powers that be, that there's a risk here. A risk of what? Right. And I think that the problem with protest movements is we all got that kind of liberal conception of the civil rights movement where it was like People protested. They did the March on Washington, and then they passed legislation, and everything was great. And that's not how it worked, right? That's not true. The reality is that the civil rights movement had radical violent elements. It had, trade unionists. It had all sorts of people, anarchists, communists, socialists, trade unionists. There were riots, a lot of them. And there was a threat to the social order. Prior to protests existing, people just did revolts. They would grab the local magistrates or tax collectors or whatever off the street, and they would arrest them. And the areas would go into civil rebellion against the state, and they would have demands, and they would be like willing to fight for them, right? So I think a lot of us think of protesting as like, if we just do what we saw on the, TV and history class, it's going to result in X, Y, and Z. And the truth is that what we're learning is that our government and our liberal leaders do not give a shit if 70% of people believe that what's going on in Gaza is unacceptable. It doesn't matter if every single fucking university has a massive protest. They're going to send the state to repress it. And so what you're really asking me is like, what do you do when you live in a society that's not free? What do you do when you live in a society that doesn't listen to its people and doesn't care about the democratic will and is willing to use the state to suppress people of a certain viewpoint in order to do evil shit? And, I don't know that I have an answer for you right that yet. Maybe it's not the venue for an answer, but my take is unbowed, unafraid. We're going to go directly at these people. We're going to show solidarity. I think that you should absolutely call on more and more people to make their voice be heard on this issue. When a genocide is going on, I don't think people have the right to be silent. Maybe I'm an asshole, but I don't think that you could be Brian Tyler Cohen or who's another person who's a coward, David Pakman. You're talking about politics every fucking day and you're going to ignore a genocide? No.
Pakman's, bad on that issue. Yeah.
And I don't think you should ignore that. I don't think you should collaborate with people that don't talk about fucking genocide. I think you shouldn't allow people to get away with being quiet about it, let alone supporting Israel. Now, maybe that's me being an asshole. I'm kind of pugilistic, but no, we need to stand up and be counted. And we need to make supporting this Israeli genocide unacceptable socially, politically, economically. If you have privilege, you better be fucking using it. That's my general take. I don't know if that made sense, but
no, it makes perfect sense. I like that last thing you said there about making this just unacceptable, making this untenable, making this socially, escalating the rhetoric and the action to the point where you can't do this without it being a serious threat in material or social or economic ways in terms of, boycotting. But
don't you take your business elsewhere, if you can. I think the main thing that I'm trying to educate people on right now and make people more aware, it isn't just that Israel is doing this thing. No, it is us. The United States is doing the genocide. Israel is the cat's paw. Israel is the puppet. They could not do it but for us. We provide them military assistance directly with targeting. We are supporting them with refueling planes. We have aircraft carriers enforcing in the Red Sea, fighting the Houthis to keep shipping lanes open to the Israelis. We are shooting down missiles. We are helping them target members of resistance groups. We're sending THAAD system, which is the Theater High Altitude Air Defense System, which costs $1 billion each, which is this super advanced anti-missile system. We're sending our troops to run it. 2 of them into Israel. There's only 7 in the world. 2 of them are now in Israel. We are sending them all their bombs. We pay for all of their jet aircraft. We send them the rockets of the Iron Dome, made in America. Israel cannot do this without us. We are doing it. It's not Israel doing it. We are doing it. We spent $330 billion cumulatively on Israel. This is not I'm against it, but it's Israel. It's not our problem. They're just doing it. It's horrible, but it's not our problem. No, they can't do it, but for us. We're protecting them in the United Nations. We're vetoing Security Council resolutions. We are persecuting members of the ICC, the International Criminal Court. We are going after the prosecutor of the International Criminal Court. We are going after the International Court of Justice. We are attacking South Africa. We are attacking members of the media. We are doing everything we can to support this genocide, including and to sending American troops into Israel. That, I think, is the thing that people really need to understand. There's this idea out there that Israel would do it on their own, or hey, the US doesn't have that much power, or Joe Biden is doing what he can, or Kamala Harris is fighting for a ceasefire. Yeah, the working tirelessly bullshit is a fucking lie. And that's why I told people never vote for Kamala Harris. I was open to being persuaded. I was open to her saying, I'll do X, Y, and Z thing to stop this war. And I would have, held my nose and voted for her for that. But she said she would do nothing differently. And for anybody who's a lib, I doubt there's any libs in your chat, but if there are, and they disagree with me, if she had a different position than Donald Trump on Israel, she would have said something in the 6 months since she lost humiliatingly in the election. She would have come out and said, they need to do X, Y, and Z. Netanyahu is this. The only time she's come out is when Hamas released that American Israeli soldier of the IDF, the prisoner of war that was released by Hamas. That's the only time she said anything, is celebrating them and their release. She said nothing about the war in Gaza. She has done nothing to indicate she would have done a single thing differently.
Especially despite the direct material and political incentivization that Donald Trump, being the one doing this now, presents for her to say something, on top of not saying anything at all.
And when I went on Hassan's stream on election day to do an analysis of Pennsylvania, and I said to the 300,000 people there, I don't vote for Kamala. Vote PSL. And I said that because of this genocide. I don't think genocide is ignorable. I don't think it's something that you can ever look past. Because if you're willing to see children exterminated for your own petty gain, you don't think they would bring that same violence here? You don't think they would do something here in the same vein? If they can break international law wantonly, if they could do all these crimes wantonly for 18 months, and you're going to ignore that because of some petty fucking, program that you want for yourself, that is sociopathic behavior in my view, and unignorable.
I have trouble.
So that's my view on that. So, sometimes people think I'm kind of a sock dem or something. I'm not, but it's because I engage with electoral politics and say that it would have been better if Bernie won than Biden or whatever. But on this stuff, I don't think there's any space for disagreement. I really don't.
Yes, one thing you said in there about this potentially happening to us, and that being a kind of clear motivation to just say that it needs to stop because it's this is setting a precedent. I get where that comes from, and I think a lot of times it can be compelling to point out, especially maybe a similar example as being this is your tax dollars that are being used to do this. We're tying it to a person directly, an American, and saying you are connected to this. I mean, those are completely valid connections to make. But I
think that's an important argument to make.
It's an important argument to make. My problem is, and maybe this is just because I've seen this every single day, the footage of what's happening, is that it shouldn't take an appeal to someone's own situation to get them to empathize with genocide being wrong and needing to do everything we can to stop it. And I can sometimes find it frustrating when it's okay, I get why you're saying that, but also why does it need to be tied to your taxes being affected by it? Why can't it just be this is wrong, this is disgusting, we need to do everything to stop it? But I mean, I understand why. It's just I forget where I was going with that, but I'm sure you feel the same way, right?
You're saying why do they have to feel like they're paying for it to be against it? And can I talk about that? It'll be a little bit philosophical, maybe. So I went to law school, and I've also I specialized academically in political philosophy. And the reason why I bring this up is kind of understanding conservative mind. And I think liberalism in America is a conservative movement. So in the conservative mind, it's been put a lot of different ways, but the way that you'll see it put the most is that we, quote, live in a fallen world, right? Which is the idea that sin brought into evil into this world. Like we lived in the Garden of Eden and then we sinned against God by, eating the forbidden fruit, and we live in a fallen world, and there's going to be bad things that happen that we can't stop bad things from happening, right? Because of that original sin. So this is fundamentally at the heart of what you're talking about, which is like most libs just think there's only so much good to go around. This is a fallen world. So our job is to make sure the righteous get as much of the good as possible, and the fallen, they suffer, right? And when bad things are happening to people, they probably kind of deserve it a little bit. Just world fallacy. This is kind of the heart of that liberal conservative apathy that you're decrying, which is like they fundamentally they don't really and truly in their mind realize that these are innocents being killed. They really, really, really can't comprehend that, because that would mean that evil shit is happening to good people. And because of their just world bullshit, just because of their fallen world hypothesis, that would mean that injustice is being done. And they just can't handle that. They're emotionally immature. So the reason why I bring, it back to Americans are doing it, our tax dollars are doing it, is because it doesn't give you room to be apathetic. It doesn't allow you to sit in that kind of conservative focus, orientation during the world. I'm sure many of you know exactly what I'm talking about. I bet you've talked to people who say shit like this, right? Who believe in just world fallacy, who believe in fallen world theology rather. So you have to break people out of this and show how we are committing the sin. We are doing it. It's not just like, well, there's bad things that happen to the world and I need to care for my family and my nation and I'm not involved and like I can't fix all the problems in the world and, I need to focus on the people I care about and my community. And it's like the money from your community is being taken to Israel to kill children. You are responsible for that. And so that's why I do it, just because like I know where liberals are mentally, and we need as many people as possible to abandon those ways of thinking to something that's a little bit more material based on reality. We could show that we can fix these problems, we can do good, and how we're all connected. I don't know if this makes sense. I'm kind of rambling a little bit, but
no, it makes perfect sense. Yeah, that's just a question I've been struggling with: is how can we maintain a basic moral anti-genocide position on its own sake, while also recognizing the political constraints of being in America and people not giving a fuck unless you give them a reason to, or a material reason to. And what I struggle with still is if someone is convinced and compelled by the notion that this is wrong because we are connected to it, which is understandable. It's more, I guess, convincing than just this is wrong in a moral sense, so you should care about it.
Right.
I don't know how meaningful that distinction is, or meaningful that change is, when it is based on the foundation of it's my tax dollars, I don't want it to go there, in the same way that I don't want tax dollars to go to, there's right-wing conservatives that are pro-Israel because they are, what is it called, isolationist, right? Where they're like, I don't want money going there, I don't want money going to the public schools either, I want my money. Oh yeah, sorry, what did I say?
You said there are right-wing conservatives who are pro-Israel.
Oh yeah. No, yeah. Pro-Palestine, right? Nominally, like they advocate against Israel because of the financial ties, and that's where I have trouble being like, there's a certain nihilism about the possibility of Americans ever really meaningfully changing when it comes to their relative levels of comfort and appealing to slightly.
How do you make Americans not Amerifats?
Yeah,
is basically what you're asking. You're like, how do we make Americans not Amerifats? Yeah,
or
is it even possible?
Look elsewhere in the world.
Yeah, I mean, I talk about this a lot because this is a place where I have disagreements with people. America right now practices what's known as the Truman Doctrine. I'm sure you guys all know this. I'm not trying to be too didactic here, so forgive me, but America practices the Truman Doctrine. The Truman Doctrine basically says that the United States of America reserves the right to interfere in the internal politics of any country in the world who has politics we do not like. That is the Truman Doctrine. That is our military position. That is our position as global hegemon. We will interfere by any means necessary in any country that has the politics we do not like. I think the number one thing you can do as an Amerifat, as a person in the imperial core, is to get America the fuck back. Now, I want America to be a gloriously positive force in the world, but I kind of doubt we ever could be. I think the number one thing we need to do is prevent the United States from stepping on every outgrowth of socialism and leftism and even anarchism, maybe, that grows around the world. Like, we are there interfering, sanctioning, and FDR, the foreign policy that existed before Truman, enacted by FDR, was called the good neighbor policy. The good neighbor policy was, we don't interfere. We build high, a good neighbor builds a high fence. We engage in mutually beneficial agreements. We don't interfere with your internal politics. We help when needed and asked, but we stay back. That is what if we were to get America from the interventionist warmonger hyperpower we are to just respecting other countries' sovereignty and peace, a lot of the shit that's going wrong in the world would fix itself. A lot of socialist movements, whether it's in Latin America, whether it's in Africa, whether it's in Asia, they would bloom because the United States is the single biggest power interfering. Every single U.S. embassy is a CIA safe house. Every single American base is an invasion and waiting. And so it's our job as the members of the Imperial Core, the people who benefit from the system, to pull back on the chain, to get America back within its own shores. And if we did, I think it would be pretty remarkable, the progress that would be made all over the world. That's why I think having some shitty sock dem president would be a hell of a lot better. I don't think they would do shitty imperialist shit that I would hate, but it would be a lot less than Donald Trump and Israel threatening a war with fucking Iran right now as we speak. Like, you know what I mean? We are on the edge of disaster with their confrontations with China, with their confrontations with Iran. And I worry about the blowback that's going to come back to our shores and the fascist counter reaction and all those other things. So I think it's worth focusing on convincing Americans, hey, maybe we should bring some of that money home and build housing for everyone and high-speed rail and hospitals and spend on science and technology and cleaning up our environments and giving us clean water and air and, public transport and everything else that we all value. I think that would actually do pretty good.
Yeah. What are issues that you find most compelling for people when talking to, I guess, a liberal or even a right-winger to get them to see your perspective and get them to, I guess, understand it and push them left, whether that's online or in real life?
I come from a very conservative family. I actually have made all of my parents and my family members into Bernie-crats or even further left. And they started out from as right-wing conservative military family type people. And how do you deconstruct those beliefs? Well, the things that worked for me and my family, I think is the best example, is everything has to be relevant to the person you're talking to. I think when you're organizing people or convincing them, you should be asking more questions in the beginning than you do lecturing. You should be asking them what they need. What are their dreams? What are their fears? What are their anxieties? And then you connect those things with your answers. You don't go at them with a fucking speech and with the magic of your words transform them because you said the right, fucking 5 things in a very paternalistic way. You sit back and let them talk to you, and then you shape the conversation in a way to kind of plant those seeds. And you give them, what I did that really worked for me, and what has worked for me over the years of organizing, is planting seeds for people to go check on their own. Plan to have multiple conversations. Plan to have multiple discussions. Plan to have this be a chill, safe place where people can make mistakes and say dumb shit without fear. And when people feel like you respect them and you care about them and you're listening to them and it's safe, then you could have these kind of conversations. It doesn't always work, of course. But if you asked me how I do it, and that's how I do it. And for me in particular, organized labor was a huge one for my family, which is why I'm kind of biased as it being important. Solidarity, getting my family members who are more conservative to see the dynamic between labor and capital, management and the workers, et cetera, really, really grounded them and helped build that class consciousness. So that's always been something that I see as relevant to their lives. They can see it, they can feel it. And then, they could also get the win. When labor signs a new contract, they get a big raise. It's very easy for them to go, working collectively resulted in a win for me. Basically figuring out what people need, what's relevant to them, and then going from there. Because I have a million opinions, right? I have a million policy positions. I have a million thoughts on politics because I've been passionate about this for decades. You know, I'm in the 0.00001% of political knowledge, right? So if I just go there and try to dump on people, I'll never stop talking, as people are experiencing during the stream.
No, it's good because I think there's absolutely a place for it for people that watch you or people that watch me to be able to get more, right? This isn't necessarily the crowd that needs to, like, I think a lot of, that's one thing I like. I've been, I guess it brings me a feeling of, like, I guess, solidarity when I'm thinking about how this happens on the internet, because the conversation for so long was focused on, like, debate and changing people's minds and appealing to the most, like, sensible, rational, logicking your way into politics. And I think there's truth to it if you're in terms of the things that you are saying, but when you're actually talking to people and when those people all have a common goal, I think there's a ton of value in just orienting them in the right way with stuff like the things you're saying, where it's like, okay, you can consider this perspective, but we're not starting from a framework of, here's why Zionism is wrong. It's like, no, we're past a lot of this stuff. So an audience of people,
right?
I don't know, the kind of online, I guess, solidarity and overlap, which was what I wanted to ask in specific reference to what you were talking about. How can what you're talking about happen online with content, like with what you're doing, with what I'm doing? Because I think in a lot of ways it's difficult. Like if I'm making a video about Ethan Klein, there's no way to make a video about any of these people that have these troubling politics, let's say, in a way that will get them to say, oh, I was wrong. Here's why I'm actually pro-Palestine now, and here's why Israel needs to be dismantled. It's like that doesn't happen, but there's a cohort in between of people that can be convinced, but without necessarily appealing or capitulating on your politics or your rhetoric.
I think I'm going to say something that a lot of leftists don't like to hear, but it is what it is, which is you have to be comfortable with the reality that you can't save them all. That some people are just our enemies. Some people just need to be overcome. Some people just need to be forced. And that's just the way it goes sometimes. You know, some people are genocidal maniacs, and there's literally nothing we can do or say that will make them stop except beating them politically and stopping them. You know, and like somebody like Ethan Klein is not listening to us in any way. He's not, he dehumanizes us. He doesn't want to listen. He doesn't consider us people. He finds us disgusting in a visceral fashion. There is no way to get through to him. You know, I saw that you went on the during the content cop. You were on the you had some nice words to say about Ethan.
Mistake.
And
huge
like
mistake.
Well, I don't think it was. I understand why you did it. I wouldn't do that. You know, I've always not liked Ethan Klein, but I get what you were trying to do. You were trying to be like, hey, you're a human being. I'm a human being. I see you as a human being. I have empathy for you. We could have a common ground. You know, I don't think you're a bad person.
I think some of them did say that.
Well, I mean, it was the idea of it, right? The idea
it's
of
what
it
the
in general.
items was trying to do. Yeah.
And I'm not trying to say you were all kissing Ethan's ass or anything. I'm just saying you were extending an olive branch.
Yeah.
You know, you were building your side of the bridge, and you're saying, hey, if you're willing to change, we're willing to, you know, open our arms to you. You know, we don't dehumanize you. We see you as a person who's wrong, but we see you as a person fundamentally. A lot of these guys just will never, ever do that. And it's because of pain and fear. And a little bit of, you know, maybe it's narcissism, maybe it's social conditioning. You know, you have to remember people's identities are socially conditioned. They're socially contextual. Like, could you really think Ethan Klein lives in a world where he could suddenly become an anti-Zionist, truly? Like, there's no fucking way. Like, in his personal life, it would fall apart. So you're attacking the foundations of his life. Of course he's going to treat you like an enemy that he hates, because you want him to kind of get rid of everything that gives him identity and meaning. Like, it's impossible. So what are we doing with these when we fight with these people? Well, first of all, they have antis. They have people that don't like them, that might not have any opinions on fucking Gaza. I want every single person who doesn't like Ethan Klein to be an anti-Zionist, passionate anti-Zionist. So if they're going to come watch my stream because I said Ethan Klein is stinky or whatever, and then I get to draft them into the pro-Palestine movement, I'm going to do that. There's going to be a lot of people that are just there to see the discussion or see the drama. I want those people to be converted. I want everybody who has any level of open-mindedness to come over to our side. So that's who I'm talking to. right? If they're a Ethan Klein's parasocial obsessed fan, they're Ethan Klein, they're a professional Zionist, I'm never going to reach those people. Their paychecks depend, or their identity depends on their view, and they can't be reached. But there's a lot of people that are here to see the spectacle that you might be able to reach. And that's, going back to what we started talking about, that's the way I see it.
I like that example because it's a little bit different from the things a lot of us focus on when it comes to talking about someone like Ethan Klein, which is like, okay, use him to farm views and content and talk about Palestine because he's being a Zionist, as opposed to doing that because he's saying some shit about some influencer, and you can make a video that even more people will see, that even more people who are uninitiated to the conversation will see, and then inject anti-Zionist politics into that. Like you said, if they're there to see you say he's stinky, like if there's an anti-fandom, that's even more. That's an even bigger pool of people than, I guess, when I made a video talking about how he's supporting a genocide. It's like a lot more people are going to see that, but also a good subset of them are in tune with the issue, which is why they're clicking on it more so than an entire different section of people that want to hear about internet drama on its own sake, like strictly about that. So I think that's something I hadn't considered, but I think that could be helpful.
I'll talk to you about it like the way, like in politics. This is why I love politics and organizing is so great, because it's so applicable to other areas. When we're trying to form a campaign, we have this imagine interlocking spheres, right? Where there's a smaller circle, then a bigger circle, then a bigger circle, then a bigger circle. With this issue, the very, very heart of the people that are going to watch our videos are the people that like you or like me, our fans, right? Whenever we post a video or start a stream, our fans are going to be there first. Then there's going to be the people that are opposed to the organization. So say you're making an anti-Israel video, people that are interested in anti-Israel content are going to come to your stream, right? Or to your video, right? So there's like that circle, right? Where you're growing, or like say you're making, so that's a bad example. That's like, say you're making a video about Ethan Klein, right? The anti-Ethan Kleins are going to be the next people there. They're there because they hate Ethan and you're shit talking Ethan, right? Then the next circle is the issue people, right? People that are going to show up because you're taking a position on the issue. So, and then there's a fourth circle, which is just people who want clout. Those are your slop tubers. They see that there's a big video or subject that's being like created, and they're there because there's eyeballs there. And that's like Ethan's big allies are all the slop tubers, right? They're just people that are there and they're triangulating to the other side. They don't believe in anything. They don't think anything. They're just there because they're there for clout. And so whenever I make a video, I'm aware of these like categories of people, right? And I try to make something that addresses each of those categories in a way that's going to pull them closer to me. And then there's this non-overlapping group of circles that are people that are just my opposition, right? That'll never get to them. And I'm okay with that. I think being okay with the fact that there's just an opposition to me that is going to exist until we win and make this irrelevant, that keeps me sane and it keeps me motivated. Pissing them off is great fun. Watching them squirm is great fun. One of the things I get criticized for is the fact that I find it funny that Ethan Klein is mad at me, and I just enjoy the fact that he's failing. And it's like, well, I mean, a little bit of spite, a little bit of fun. What's wrong with that?
Yeah, I think at this point, a lot of us... No, 100%. I love the circle analogy, because when I'm writing videos, a lot of times I have apprehension about, okay, who am I leaving behind when I make this video about a certain topic and talk about it in a certain way, and like what audience should I target it at? And what I appreciate about what you said is that you don't have to choose. Like, you can incorporate broader perspectives and the way you talk about things, and also the framing of like title, thumbnail, even to bring in a subset of people that will have a varying degree of effect. If it's someone completely uninitiated to the politics, it might be like, oh, this person is a freak. Like, this sounds really bad. Let me look up what's happening in Gaza. And they're like, oh yeah, he's a real freak. Or the people who are already on the same page now see another example of how this is happening prominently in media, right, and they're strengthened in their resolve about what needs to be done about it, or how it needs to be talked about online. And I don't know, there's all sorts of things that can happen at the same time. So I appreciate you bringing that up, because it's it can get overwhelming trying to decide how to package things. And when you say YouTube, so you upload on YouTube as well? or when you say videos?
I just started. Funnily enough, I basically decided, you know what? I need to get on YouTube just for platform diversity. So I just started posting some stuff on YouTube. I primarily am on Twitch at twitch.tv/central_committee. That's where I put 90% of my content. I have Mike from PA on Twitter and Mike from PA on YouTube. The original reason I wanted to come online to talk about politics is because I had that, an intimate knowledge of Pennsylvania politics. And I have the ability to analyze it at a little bit more in-depth level than you typically get, like watching the news or watching kind of broad discussions of the state. Like I've, been involved in politics in Pennsylvania since 2013 myself. And, I've lived all over the state. So that was my original specialization, but I just kind of became a little bit more of just a commentator as I've been successful. So if you would like to join in any of my projects, those are the places to go.
Awesome.
And I'm starting to get on TikTok too.
Oh shit.
I'm Central Committee on TikTok. I just started I'm like expanding my I'm really bad at branding. As you guys probably figured out. I'm on Central Committee on TikTok. I just started that as well. So we're doing all the things.
That's awesome, man. I think people are linking it in the chat, and I'll send it in there as well. I got somebody coming on in about a half hour, but if there's anything else you wanted to cover, the floor is yours.
All I wanted to say is everybody should donate. Everybody should if you haven't already donated, if you're here for drama, if you don't like either one of us, redeem your soul by at least throwing a couple bucks towards, and if you love us, donate even more. Go donate to the cause. It's absolutely incredible what you've managed to do. What are you at right now?
510,000, 508,000, something like that.
500,000 is fucking crazy.
Yeah, it's incredible.
So that's
amazing.
That is incredible. I just want to say that I've really appreciated your stuff from afar. I've watched your content from time to time on my stream. I hope you don't mind. But I've loved seeing you grow as a content creator. And we should hang out one day. You know what? Maybe you can come on my stream.
I would love that. It was nice to talk to you. It was very helpful, and keep up the good work. And I'm sure we'll talk again soon. But I appreciate you coming.
All right, brother. Solidarity forever. Free Palestine.
Free Palestine. Peace.
Peace.